Hi, I'm Claudia. That was a horrible way to start. Anyway, hi, welcome back. I'm not here very often, but when I'm here, I try to deliver. And today we're doing my favorite series that I do on Instagram, which I call 12 Days of Books. Here, you're just getting it all in one video. So, this is the series where on Instagram, every day for the last 12 days of the year, I pick a book starting in January and pick a book from every month of the year that, maybe not was my favorite, but one I'd recommend a lot, or who knows. And so I thought I would go through all 12 books. So for January, we have By the Fae by Gemma Croft. This one was a really cute romance where I think she's human and he's fae and they're roommates, I think. Anyway, I just remember really enjoying this book in January, and that's why I picked it. Also, all the covers should be up somewhere on the screen. February was one that I buddy read with one of my best friends, and it was her pick, ironically enough, and it was Nine Perfect Strangers by Liane Moriarty. This one was crazy. I fully don't really know what happened at the end, and yeah. So anyway, it was a crazy time. The plot twists were insane, and I recommend it if you like thrillers. See, we try to get some different things in here. March, this would be day 3, but we don't have days. So in March, my book pick was The Queen's Gambit by Jessie Mahalik. This book is, I really like Jessie Mahalik's books. I like specifically her Starlight Shadow series, and so it might actually be Mihalik's. I'm not sure, so I apologize for any names that I pronounce incorrectly. Anyway, back to talking about it. She writes really good, sci-fi romance books, and this one was a trilogy that followed, I think, the same cast of characters all the way through, and it was really good. It was the start of a trilogy. It was really good. April, I read one of my favorite fantasy books of the year. This was One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. I loved this series. I loved especially that it was only a duology. I don't like really long fantasy series while I'm in school or while I'm doing things. I have a hard time reading really long fantasy series, and this one was a duology, and I loved it for that reason. And it was just as good as any really long fantasy series I've ever read. So highly recommend One Dark Window. I already ordered The Night and the Moth and the Night, something like that. Up next is May. This one is a standalone fantasy. It's Where the Dark Stands Still by A.B. Poranek. Either way, I loved this book. It was so good, and so I cannot recommend Where the Dark Stands Still enough. It was so good. Up next, we have actually probably a middle grades book. This is Dragon Slippers by Jessica Day George. And this one is the start of a 3-book trilogy that I would say is perfect for 5th to 6th graders ish. 4th through 7th grade, I would say, is when somebody should be reading this. But I reread it this year because I loved it as a kid, and something reminded me of it, and I was like, I should reread it. And yeah, it wasn't as good as I remembered, but it was so nostalgic that I had to include it in this, especially because I try to recommend different things. In July, I read Business Casual by B.K. Borison. This one was I read it on the beach. It was perfect for that. Literally, I read it in 2 days, laying on the beach. It was great for that. And so I highly recommend it for that. It was really sweet, cute romance. August was Wait for It by Mariana Zapata. This was a book, it was a reread, but it was one that I didn't really appreciate the first time I read it. And so rereading I just was like, wow, this one was way better than I thought it was the first time I read it, which it's Mariana Zapata. Of course it was good. In September, the book I chose was Never Say Never by Skylar Snow and Bria Aleppo. I apologize. I have no idea. And so I'm not even going to try it again because I will probably butcher it worse. This one is a dark romance. And so this is for all the people who like a mafia romance. But this one had a little twist because it was an MM mafia romance. And it was just, I hadn't read anything like that. And I really had liked the other 3 books in the series. And so I liked this one a lot too. And so this is why I picked it for this, because I figured gotta get something in for the dark romance, because every so often I go through a phase where I'm in a dark romance phase. The book I chose from October is All That Remains by Sue Black. This was actually the only nonfiction I read all year, and I loved it. It was so good. She has a very interesting take on death and on like what should happen to somebody's body once they die, what she wants to happen to her body after she dies. And so it was really interesting read. Her writing style was outstanding. Like, it was just the way she was able to make really, really serious topics like kind of light, and like introduce some amusement, and like I cannot praise her book enough, and I really, really hope that if you get the chance, you read it, because it was outstanding. Oh, also, she's a forensic anthropologist, so it was kind of about her life and her career, and about forensic anthropology as a whole, and death, and it was outstanding. For November, the book that I picked is A Dawn of Onyx by Kate Golden. I have not finished the series because I had to wait for the hold from my library to come in, and I then got reading other things and never went back to it. But I did really like the first one. I appreciated it because it was just the start of a trilogy instead of like a really long series, and I liked the characters. I thought it was a cool concept, and I will be going back to the series. And then for December, this one, if you know me, you know I am obsessed with Mariana Zapata. Right? We know this. And for December, I picked Rocket Science by Emily Mayer. This is not a Mariana Zapata book, but for a month I was searching for a book like Mariana Zapata, and this was it. And I loved it. It was an astrophysicist and a pro soccer player. So highly recommend, and I think you should read it. Anyway, that's all. Thanks for watching. I will see you soonish.